Hello, my name is Kim and I'm with the Shared Spaces team. Today, I will be showing you how to create a digital 3D object from scratch in the Nomad Sculpt 3D modeling app. We will move through all of the steps from downloading the app, navigating the app layout, using geometry to build your object, using the sculpting options, doing texture painting, and exporting your file. You can skip to relevant sections by clicking on the chapters in the description or scrubbing to the markers in the timeline. If you are totally new to working in 3D space, we recommend starting with our terminology and basics of working in 3D tutorial. I'm going to begin by opening the App Store and then clicking on the search button at the bottom right. And then in the search bar, I am going to type in Nomad, Nomad, and then the first result shows Nomad Sculpt. And you can just see the app available for download on the top right. So this is the store page for Nomad Sculpt. One thing I just wanted to mention is that this app is great in terms of privacy since it doesn't collect any of your data. So I'm just going to begin by opening up the Nomad app, and here we can see that there's a grid view. I'm just going to kind of reorient myself, and this shows your 3D space along the X, Y, and Z coordinates. First, I would like to point out a button at the top left of the screen. If you press the leftmost button, it will bring up the following menu. I'm just going to quickly go to the manual because it is very, very useful and explains a lot of information in a quite succinct way. Now I'm going to click on the Tools tab, which is on the bottom left of the screen. Because it can be a bit overwhelming familiarizing yourself with the various tools, the Tools section is extremely helpful. It gives an overview showing how to alter the settings of the tools. And then a bit further down, it shows videos of the effects that each tool has and gives a brief explanation of what each tool does, which I find is really useful because sometimes if you just try out the tools, it might not be totally obvious exactly what they are doing to your model. So now I'm going to navigate back to the app, and I just want to begin by explaining how to move around in the space. So you can drag one finger to kind of rotate the area that you see here that's a grid. There's this kind of sphere in the top right that is red, green, and blue. You can use it to change the way that you view the scene. Now I'm going to add a sphere to the scene. You can add objects to your scene by tapping the button in the top left, which is third from the left. This shows you a variety of common shapes that you can use as building blocks for 3D modeling. I'm just going to go ahead and add a sphere to my scene. So you can pan side to side, up and down by dragging two fingers up and down, left and right. Zooming in by pinching and spreading your fingers, or zooming out by doing the opposite. Now I'm going to select the Gizmo tool, which is in the top right toolbar. In Nomad Sculpt, this is the tool that you use to alter the transform of your object. So that includes moving it, rotating it, and scaling it. If you want to move it, you can use the 3 colored arrows, and each arrow just has a different color depending on the axis that it is moving your object. You can also use the colored squares to translate your model across the different axes. When you move your model this way, it displays a sort of tether line to show which position your model started in. You can also use the peach-colored dot in the center to move the object freely in space. To scale your object on the different axes, you can press and drag the various circle icons. Dragging toward the center of the object will decrease the scale, while dragging away from the center will increase the scale. If you want to scale your object as a whole, which includes all of the axes, you can press and drag on the outermost circle that encloses your object. Just like before, dragging inwards towards the center of the object will decrease its size, while dragging outwards away from the center of the object will increase its size. If you would like to rotate your object on the different axes, there are the 3 different colored curved lines that you can use to rotate your object. If you would like to rotate your object based on your current point of view, you can do this by pressing and dragging the innermost circle. So once you've gotten your object to the position, rotation, and scale that you like, you will want to click on the Validate button, which is at the top center, and this will open up the toolbar on the top right, which allows you to select the different tools. If you would like to change your view of the toolbar, you can press the wrench icon that's in the top right. This will give you more space to work on your object, but because the icons are now lined up, you'll have to scroll up and down to access all of them. Another helpful way to get more screen space is to tap 4 fingers at once, which will toggle the UI elements, like the various menus and buttons. Again, that's tapping all 4 fingers at once. I'm going to briefly go over a couple of the topology tools, which you can use to either increase or decrease the number of polygons on your model. Here I have enabled wireframe mode, so it's easier to see how detailed the mesh of the sphere is. Near the top left, you can see the stats of the sphere, which contains just over 6,000 vertices. This is a relatively small number of vertices and is easily within the ideal range for bringing into augmented reality apps, such as shared spaces. If your model has a high number of vertices, it may not be possible to import depending on the app. If you open the Topology tab and select Dyn Topo, you can use this feature to reduce your polygon count on certain parts of your model. To do this, make sure that the decimation method is selected and then set the detail to a value less than 100%. You might have to play around with the detail percentage a bit to determine the amount of decimation you would like. As I mentioned earlier, you can undo any changes quickly by tapping 2 fingers on the screen. If you would like to reduce the polygon count of your entire model, you can navigate to the Miscellaneous section in the Topology tab. Similar to Dyn Topo, you will set a percentage value for how much you would like to reduce the polygon count of your model. Depending on how detailed your model is, pressing Decimate may not make a major visual difference at first. Here, as I press Decimate several times, you can see the effect become more obvious. These are just a couple of ways to alter the polygon count in Nomad Sculpt. There are many more features to play around with in the Topology tab, so I encourage you to experiment on your own. Here I have opened a new project and will be starting with a sphere. I will be making a cat-like creature, but please feel free to make any adjustments you would like as we progress. I'll start by selecting the Gizmo tool and scale the sphere to have a more oval-like shape for the head. Next, I select the clay tool to add some volume to the head where the nose and mouth will go. You can see that there are 2 red dots since I have the symmetry setting selected. Make sure to rotate the camera periodically to check that the shape is what you want from all angles. It's looking a bit lumpy, so I'm going to use the smooth tool to tidy it up a bit. I'm feeling pretty good about how this is looking, so I'm going to go ahead and add another sphere to the scene to make the nose. I'm going to move the sphere forward since it is covering the cat head, and I want to get an idea of how small to scale down the sphere. I'll go through this process of scaling and moving the sphere until I'm happy with how it looks. You can keep the shapes separate if you'd like, but I'm going to join the head and nose together since they are stored in the project separately. If you open the Scene tab, you can see that both the head and the nose are separate spheres. You can rename these spheres if you would like to keep them separate, but I'm going to join them by checking the boxes next to them, then pressing join. Now I'm going to add some ears to my cat and use the mirror effect so they are symmetrical. I'm going to select the cone shape, press the mirror button, then press validate. There are now 2 cones in the scene, but they are overlapping, so you'll need to move them apart. I'm going to scale them down, then get a better view from above to flatten them properly. Then I'm just going to keep making adjustments until they look how I want. I'll move the ears closer to where I want them on the head and check that they align properly. Finally, I'll rotate the ears and check again to make sure that there aren't any edges sticking out that I don't want showing. I think these are looking pretty good, so I'll go ahead and join the ears to the head in the Scene tab. Now I'm going to add another sphere to the scene so I can make some eyes for the cat. Just like I did for the ears, after adding the sphere, I will press the mirror button, then the validate button. I'll go through the same process of scaling, moving, and rotation to get the eyes looking more cat-like. You can see that I'm making a lot of small adjustments and taking a fair bit of time with the eyes. Even the slightest adjustments, like how far apart the eyes are from each other and how closely they are set against the head, can make a huge difference in appearance. So take as much time as you need and try not to rush yourself. I'm just going to join the eyes with the rest of the head, and now I'm going to add some pupils to the eyes. Again, I'll be using the sphere shape with the mirror effect and go through the process of using the Gizmo tool to reshape and reposition them. I want to make sure that the position of the pupils isn't slightly off or anything like that, so I'm going to press where it says front on the nav cube so I can view the cat face head on. Now I'll select the View tool to get a good look at the cat head before I move on. Now I'm going to make a body for the cat. There are several ways you can do this, but I'm going to show what I think is a really fun tool, the Lathe tool. You will draw a curved line representing 1/2 of the silhouette of the object that will be made. The shapes tend to resemble objects made by wood turning and wheel throwing, like pottery vessels. Using this tool to make a cat body might be a bit odd, but we're just having fun here. There isn't any need to follow certain conventions, and you can be as experimental as you want. I've experimented with a few shapes now, so I'm just going to use a basic rounded shape for the body. Like always, I'll use the Gizmo tool to make some adjustments. I'll just join the body to the head really quick here. Now I'm selecting the clay tool and setting it to subtractive mode so I can reduce the width of the hip area. It's pretty uneven now, so I'll just go in with the smooth tool to even it out. Next, I'm going to add some legs to the cat using the tube tool. I'll make sure that I have curve selected in the settings on the left. Like the lathe tool, with the tube tool, you will draw a curved line to create your shape. You can create bends in the tubes as you draw them, and also adjust these bends by pressing and dragging on the white circles located at each bend or joint. I'm giving the cat 3 legs on each side, because why not? I'm going to use the Gizmo tool to reposition each leg, so the flat faces at the top part of the tube legs are not showing. To select a specific leg, you can either tap on it, or you can go to the Scene tab and select the leg, assuming you haven't joined the legs to anything yet. Some of the legs are a bit too short, so I will extend them. Here, I'm just playing around with the bends in each leg, making some of them more exaggerated. The legs are looking fairly decent, so now I'm going to join them to the main body. I'll also use the smooth tool a bit where the legs connect to the body. To make feet on the legs, I have selected the drag tool. I'll go from leg to leg, pulling the mesh outward to give a foot-like shape. Depending on how close the camera is zoomed onto your model, the tool can affect the mesh to a greater degree. You'll see me undoing my steps sometimes as I go around and readjust the camera. Since I'm dragging the mesh from one angle, the resulting quote-unquote feet are quite narrow and not very realistic. You can fix this by dragging the mesh from other angles, but I ended up kind of going with it, and the feet sort of became like tentacles, at least from the front. Now I'm going to add a tail, so I'll select the tube tool again. Once I've drawn the tail, I want it to taper off at the end. To do this, before I validate the shape, I can press the radius button, which allows me to adjust the width at either end of the tube. Here, I press and drag the orange circle closer toward the white circle at the tail's tip. Now it has a nice tapered look, and I can go ahead and reposition it. To give the cat a mouth, I will select the crease tool and simply draw it on. I could have used the symmetry setting, but I suppose not everything has to be perfectly symmetrical. Finally, I'm going to make some whisker-like features. Using the drag tool again, I'm just pressing and dragging away from the cheek area. The left whisker looks not too bad, but the one on the right is a bit off. I'm going to continue using the drag tool to adjust it, then also use the move tool to reposition it a bit. This looks a bit better now, but you can see that the mesh looks a bit collapsed on the right since I stretched it out so much. To fix this, I'm going to enable the Dyn Topo function, so more polygons get added to fill out the whisker area, and then use the smooth tool to repair the area a bit. Now we can move on to adding paint to the cat creature. Since my character kind of has octopus or even Cthulhu looking tentacle legs, I'm going to go along with it and make a monster type of character. Cat Cthulhu, if you will. I'll start by selecting the paint tool, choosing a green color, then pressing paint all to have a base coat on the whole character. For the next steps, I will be using the mask tool so I can paint specific parts of the cat without making a mess of other areas. Here, with the mask tool selected, I have tapped on the cat's face, which turns it a darker shade of green. The lighter areas of the eyes and nose can be painted on, while the rest of the face is blocked out or masked. I'm going to choose a bright yellow for the cat's eyes and make it somewhat metallic. Now I'll select an orange color and make it slightly less metallic and paint the nose. I don't really have a rigid approach to using color here, so please feel free to experiment and use any colors you would like. Next, I'm going to make the pupils black. To mask around the pupils, I'm going to have the mask tool selected, press the face group button, select the pupils, then press the invert button, so everything except the pupils are masked. Now when I select the paint tool, you can see the metallic yellow of the pupils is exposed. I will paint them both black, go back to the mask tool, I'll press clear all, then press face group so I can see the colors of the cat as they actually are. Now I'm going to paint the head a slightly darker green. So I'm going to go back to the face group setting of the mask tool, then I'll select the parts of the cat that might otherwise get paint on them as I color the head. So I'm just going to select the nose, eyes, ears, and torso. Like before, I'll turn off the face group setting and then press clear all. To finish off, I'm going to add a black outline on the mouth. I won't need any masking for this, so I'm just going to select the paint tool and set the color to black. Lower the radius of the tool since the mouth is quite small, and zoom in to add the paint. Now I've finished what started as a cat and then turned into this silly little guy. Give yourself the freedom to play around and have fun, especially while you're getting used to this or any other 3D sculpting app. If you would like to experiment with adding texture to your model, feel free to check out our first video on Nomad Sculpt and the section on using the stamp tool. To export your model, you'll begin by navigating to the Project tab. Scroll down to the area titled Export, then select your preferred file type. I'm going to choose OBJ since it tends to be compatible with most other 3D related applications. I'll press Export OBJ, then I will save it to my files. I have already saved my project in Nomad Sculpt as Cat Cthulhu, so I will just use the same name for the OBJ file. Now, if I navigate to the local storage on my iPad, I can see my new OBJ file at the top left. This one file contains every component of the 3D model, but I just wanted to mention that sometimes 3D models save in several parts. So you might get a zip file or 3 files for one 3D model, but the individual files are for things like the mesh, the material, and the image texture. This project contains all of the data in one file, so there are no additional pieces to worry about. To end off, I'm going to create a new project, delete the starting sphere, then add Cat Cthulhu to the scene. In the Project tab, I'll press Import, navigate to my local storage, select the OBJ file I just created, and open it. I'll press Add to Scene, and now Cthulhu is in a new project, and you can feel free to make any changes you would like. Basic 3D modeling is just one of the steps that we cover in our AR Production Pathways learning materials. Please visit our Shared Spaces website or YouTube channel to find other videos for your augmented reality workflow.